The machines hummed softly in the quiet room as he held his mother's fragile hand. Doctors had done everything money could buy, yet her breathing grew weaker each day. He had conquered boardrooms and markets, but here he was powerless. And then, from the corner of the room, a cleaning lady whispered a prayer that changed everything. Daniel Whitmore was a man the world admired. At 42, he was a self-made millionaire, the kind whose name appeared in business magazines and charity galas. He lived in a beautiful house, drove expensive cars, and employed people who kept his life running smoothly. But none of that mattered now, because the woman who raised him, the woman who worked double shifts so he could attend school, who skipped meals so he wouldn't go hungry, was slowly slipping away. Margaret Whitmore lay in a private hospital room filled with flowers and advanced medical equipment. The best doctors visited her daily. Specialists from different cities reviewed her case. And every evening they gave Daniel the same quiet look. "We're doing all we can," one doctor said gently. Daniel nodded, though inside something was breaking. Every morning, before sunrise, he sat by his mother's bed. "Mom," he whispered, brushing her gray hair back. "It's me, Daniel." Sometimes her eyes fluttered open, sometimes they didn't. "I'm here," he said, his voice steady even when his heart wasn't. Life continued around him, even when his world felt frozen. At the hospital, staff came and went, nurses checked vitals, doctors reviewed charts, and every evening, a cleaning lady named Rosa quietly entered the room. She was in her early 50s with tired eyes and kind hands. She never spoke unless spoken to. She wiped surfaces, emptied trash, and moved like someone who didn't want to disturb anyone's pain. Daniel barely noticed her at first. To him, she was part of the background, like the beeping machines and the ticking clock. But Rosa noticed everything. She noticed how Daniel never left his mother's side, how he slept in a chair instead of going home, how he bowed his head sometimes, even when no one was watching. One night, as she cleaned near the window, she softly said, "She's lucky to have you." Daniel looked up, surprised. "She was always there for me," he replied quietly. "Now it's my turn." Rosa smiled gently. "That's love." Then she returned to her work. Days passed. Margaret grew weaker. One afternoon, the doctor pulled Daniel aside. "I'm sorry," he said. "Her body is no longer responding." Daniel felt the words hit him like a wall. "So that's it?" he asked. "After everything, that's it?" The doctor hesitated. "We can keep her comfortable." That night, Daniel sat alone with his mother. "I don't understand," he whispered, his voice cracking for the first time. "I gave everything. I worked so hard. I helped so many people." His mother didn't respond. Tears fell onto the blanket. "I'd trade all of it," he said. "Every dollar, every house. Just one more chance." In the corner of the room, Rosa paused her work. She had heard this before, not these exact words, but the pain behind them. After finishing her cleaning, she hesitated at the door. "Mr. Whitmore," she said softly. Daniel looked up, exhausted. "Yes?" "I don't want to overstep," she said carefully. "But may I pray for her?" Daniel froze. He had grown up around faith, but success had pulled him away from it. Prayer felt distant now, like something from another life. Still, something in her voice was calm, certain. "If you want," he said quietly. "It can't hurt." Rosa walked to the bedside slowly. She didn't raise her voice. She didn't use fancy words. She placed her hand gently over Margaret's. "God," she whispered, "you see this mother. You see this son. If it is your will, please bring peace and healing. And if not, give them strength." Daniel watched, unsure of what he felt. When Rosa finished, she nodded respectfully and left the room. Nothing happened. The machines continued their steady rhythm. Margaret remained still. Daniel exhaled, unsure why he had expected anything different. That night, Daniel fell asleep in the chair beside the bed. Sometime near dawn, he felt movement. "Daniel?" His eyes snapped open. "Mom?" he whispered. Margaret's eyes were open, clear. She looked at him and smiled faintly. "You're here," she said. Daniel stood so fast his chair fell backward. "I'm here," he said, tears streaming. "I'm right here." A nurse rushed in, then another. Doctors followed. Vitals improved. Oxygen levels stabilized. "It's unexpected," one doctor admitted later, "but she's responding." Daniel stood by the window, hands shaking. His eyes drifted to the hallway, searching. That evening, Rosa returned to clean the room. Before she could begin, Daniel walked toward her. "Rosa," he said, his voice unsteady. She looked worried. "Did I do something wrong?" "No," he said quickly. "You did something right." He swallowed hard. "She woke up right after you prayed." Rosa's eyes filled with tears. "I just asked," she said softly. "God decides." Over the next few days, Margaret slowly improved. She wasn't fully healed, but she was present, awake, smiling. One afternoon, she squeezed Daniel's hand. "Who's that kind woman who prays?" she asked. Daniel smiled. "Someone very important." Before Margaret was discharged, Daniel asked Rosa to stay for a moment. "I don't know how to thank you," he said. Rosa shook her head. "You don't owe me anything." Daniel paused. "Still, I'd like to help." Later that week, Rosa received a letter. Daniel had paid off her debts, funded her son's education, and quietly donated to the hospital staff fund in her name. When she tried to thank him, Daniel said only one thing: "You reminded me that faith matters more than fortune." Margaret returned home. Daniel returned to work, but changed. He listened more, he prayed more, and he never again believed money alone could save a life. Because sometimes the greatest miracles come not from power or wealth, but from a quiet prayer whispered by someone the world barely notices. Sometimes the smallest act of faith can change someone's world.